Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kadeem Morris. I'm an attorney within the housing unit here at Community Legal Services. Welcome back to another week of Tenant Tuesdays at 2, a conversation on topics related to tenant issues, mainly people in rental housing throughout Philadelphia. This is a program sponsored by the Philadelphia Eviction Prevention Project, a collaborative effort between the City of Philadelphia and 6 partner legal services agencies throughout the city. Each week, we will cover a different topic, so we invite you to come back every week for more information on issues related to tenants living in Philadelphia. You can visit our website, phillytenant.org, for information and updates on happenings throughout the city and resources that are available. If you are in need of possible representation on a landlord-tenant issue and you have a question that goes beyond what we discuss here on today's broadcast, you can give us a call at 267 443 2500. 267 443 2500. Today, I'm joined by Cameron Beecher and Rebecca McCord. They're both 2 staffers from the Energy Unit here at Community Legal Services. And today, we are going to recap some of the information that we've talked about previously. And we're going to have a really in-depth conversation about utility issues, because next to rental issues that are being faced by tenants in the city of Philadelphia, utility uncertainty is a major issue and will continue way past the end of the COVID pandemic. So I'm joined today by Cameron and Rebecca, and we will have a hopefully robust conversation on those issues. I just want to begin with a few recaps and updates. The municipal court in Philadelphia County is scheduled to reopen on June 1st. That means that evictions will start again on June 1st, unless the order is changed. The Court of Common Pleas is also closed through June 1st. And if you have a case or an eviction pending or an ejectment in either of those 2 forums, after June 1st, you should receive some type of notice as to when your case has been rescheduled to or will be rescheduled to. The Fair Housing Commission, which is a tenant forum that tenants can raise issues with their housing and landlords on, is currently accepting electronic filings. You can Google the Fair Housing Commission Philadelphia and find their resource pages and links for more information on those issues. CLS generally is currently working remotely, so if you are in need of legal representation in any of our areas except landlord tenants, you can call 215-981-3700 and you'll be directed to the department, and then someone will return your call. You'll be prompted to leave a voicemail and someone will return your call as soon as possible. So with that being said, in that brief introduction, I kind of want to get the conversation started around utility issues. And I'm going to invite Cameron to, we know that there's a moratorium in place on evictions. Is there any such moratorium for utility shutoffs, and what does that look like for tenants in Philadelphia?
There's currently moratoriums on place for PECO, PGW, and the Philadelphia Water Department in Philadelphia. And that moratorium is going to last until at least June 1st, with the possibility of it being extended. Now, if it does get extended, there's the possibility that the utilities could be on slightly different timelines. PECO and PGW are regulated by the Public Utility Commission, and the commission has ordered that there will be no shutoffs as long as Governor Tom Wolf's emergency order is in effect. So if that emergency order is extended, then the moratorium on shutoffs for PECO and PGW could also be extended. But the water department's not regulated by the Public Utility Commission, so they could be on a slightly different timeline, but it's also possible that their moratorium could be extended as well.
So just to recap or break that out a little bit, the Public Utility Commission is the statewide agency that is over all regulated utility companies throughout Pennsylvania. And they have issued an order that basically requires PECO and PGW to not do any termination activity for as long as the governor's emergency order is in place. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it. Perfect.
And the water department is not regulated, but they are following a similar process for terminations.
Yes.
Okay, so that's some good news for tenants throughout Philadelphia. If you are wondering about the status of your water bill, if you've fallen behind due to COVID-19, or even your electric or gas bill, right now you are protected by the governor's moratorium on evictions and just the statewide emergency, and you're also protected by the water department following similarly and doing that. So my question for you, Rebecca, is what about those individuals who may have already been shut off and are now facing life without the ability to pay for their bills? How can they get restored? Is there a process set up for that?
Yeah, so each utility is doing it a little differently. The water department is proactively restoring. So if you were shut off before the moratorium began on March 13th, they have tried to restore you. If you have not been restored, it's likely that they didn't reach you and then didn't go through with that restoration. So you can give them a call. Their phone number is 215-685-6300. For PECO, they are restoring PECO customers who did not have service, but they're only doing so if you call in before. They aren't doing it on their own. So you would have to call PECO to request that they restore you. And then PGW at this time is not restoring customers who were off prior to the moratorium. If you are shut off, if your gas is shut off, you should let CLS's utility energy unit know, because this is something that we would like to assist with. And one caveat about PECO service and restoring is that if you haven't had service for 6 months or more, they would require an underwriter to come out and inspect to make sure that your electric system is all up to snuff, which does have a fee attached to it of about $100 to $200. So that's generally required for those situations. And if your water is shut off and it's not able to turn back on, the water department might require a notice of defect. And in that case, you should contact us if you can't get assistance with those repairs that are needed for your water. But there are help loans through the water department that can assist with that.
Okay, that was a lot of information. So I kind of want to take it in step-by-step format. So you said that PGW is not actively restoring customers in response to COVID-19, but is there a way that a PGW customer who might have been shut off, can they still call in and, let's say, request some sort of restoration payment arrangement? Is that option still available to them?
Yeah, there are a few different options which we can go through. If you're shut off for a payment for being unable to pay your utility bills, they will restore if you meet their payment demands. And there is a program that is called the Customer Responsibility Program. If you have not been enrolled in that before and are now within their income guidelines, they will restore with your enrollment in the program. And there are also some grant assistance options that can help you meet your balance due. But the difference between PGW and PECO and the water department is they are restoring, those PECO and the water department are restoring even if you aren't able to meet the payment at that time.
And as you said before, with PECO customers, there's a fee for if you haven't had service for about 6 months for them to basically come out and inspect your property to make sure that everything is working correctly. And that can range anywhere from $100 to $200. So people should be aware that if they're approaching PECO, they might, is that billed on your first bill or do you have to pay that in advance?
That's unrelated to your PECO bill. That would be a payment to the contractor through the underwriter.
Okay, that's good to know. So it won't be billed later. So I think you started touching on this. So I'll shift to Cameron. Can we talk about utility assistance programs and resources to help low-income Philadelphians manage their bills or just get their services restored?
Yeah, so if your services are on the main tools that you have in order to ensure that you can keep your bills affordable going forward, and also potentially manage some debt that you might have accumulated, is the low-income programs. So each utility has their own low-income program. As Becca said, for PGW, that's the CRP program. For PICO, it's the CAP program, or the Customer Assistance Program. And for the water department, it's the tiered assistance program. So like I said, those are all low-income programs. You have to meet a certain income threshold in order to qualify. In order to apply, you would just need to send in your proof of income. And for the water department, you would need proof of income and proof of residency. And that can be something like a copy of your ID and copy of your most recent utility bills. There's two main benefits to enrolling in all of those programs. The first is that if you're a first-time enrollee, they'll take whatever debt or arrears you might have accumulated, and they'll set that aside, and you can earn forgiveness on it. The way you earn forgiveness is a little different in each program. The other benefit is that you can potentially get more affordable bills going forward. For PICO, you may be eligible for a credit that would be applied to your current charges and lower them going forward. For PGW and the water department, you may be eligible for a bill that's equal to a percentage of your income. The forgiveness, like I said, is a little different for each program. For PICO, you earn it over 12 months, and you earn it as you continue to pay your new bills going forward. For PGW, that's 36 months. And for the water department, forgiveness isn't currently part of the program, but will become part of the program in September, and it'll be 24 months that you have to keep up with your payments.
So I think this is very useful information, and it bears delving a little deeper into the various programs. So we can start with PICO's CAP program. My understanding is that that is somehow tied to the household income, and then as a corresponding thing, a homeowner or a renter would pay a percentage of their bill based on their income, and then the other percentage is covered through assistance through the company. So can you tell us a bit more about what it looks like if you're on CAP with PICO?
Right, so if you're on CAP, PICO will take into consideration your household size, your household income, and also your past usage. And they will use that to calculate a credit that in theory would bring your bill down to a percentage of income, a certain percentage of income. Now that formula gets a little complicated, so it doesn't always end up that you get the same bill every month, or that your bill actually equals that percentage of income, but that's what the program is intended to do. So ultimately, it'll just look like a regular bill, but if you look on the second page of your bill, you'll see that a credit, if you're eligible for one, has been applied to your charges.
So I think a great incentive there for maybe someone who hasn't been previously enrolled in one of these programs is that you get a reduced bill that is designed to bring your bill to some closer level of affordability than what you've previously paid without the assistance that comes through the program. And then you also mentioned that PICO has arrearage forgiveness, which, correct me if I get this wrong, that means that the balance that you bring in, if you're a first-time enrollee into the program, is frozen, doesn't earn any interest. It just sits there and is forgiven over the period of 12 months if you make your consistent payments to PICO of whatever your discounted bill is every month for that 12-month period. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So they'll, as you said, they'll freeze the arrears, and each month that you pay, because it's on a 12-month cycle, 1/12 of that pre-program arrearage would be forgiven.
Okay. And for PGW, I think you mentioned that there's a similar customer responsibility program, and both of these programs at this point are accepting furlough or termination letters as a proof of income for you to enroll. So what's the benefit of PGW's program?
So PGW also shares the same benefits to PICO, which is the arrearage forgiveness if you're enrolling for the first time. So whatever your balance may be or your debt may be with the utility company when you enroll, they'll take it, they'll set it aside, and they'll freeze it. And you can earn forgiveness on it if you continue to make your new payments going forward. For PGW, it's a little bit of a longer timeline. It's 36 months instead of 12 months. So each month that you pay, 1/36 of that previous balance will be forgiven. And you should also be eligible on PGW's program for a bill that's either equal to a percentage of your income or an average bill. So taking a look at what your usage was and giving you just an average bill, so it'll be flat every month. And as you said, they are accepting furlough letters or termination letters in place of your proof of income. Typically, they'll ask for income from your past 30 days, but if you were just furloughed, you should just send that letter and that'll be acceptable as proof of income.
So those are great programs that are available to both PGW and PICO customers. Now, I know you mentioned that the water department has a little different program where there's still the availability of a discounted bill, but there's no arrearage forgiveness on the balance that you bring in. So can you talk us through that a little more?
Right, so there's not currently arrearage forgiveness, but that will become part of the program in September. But you do get the benefit of when you first enroll, they will take that balance and they will freeze it and they won't collect on that balance. The other thing to keep in mind with the water department's low income program is that they're going to ask for a little more documentation when you apply. Instead of just your proof of income, you would also need to include proof of residency. So your ID, a photo of your ID which shows that you're living at the place where you're applying, and also your utility bills can be used as proof of residence. Understand many tenants may not have the water bill in their name, and may be in the landlord's name. So you can talk to your landlord and see if they'd be willing to allow you to get a tenant account, and then you can apply for that tenant account, and then after that, apply for the tiered assistance program. It may be a little difficult to apply for a tenant account right now, just given that there's not a ton of staff working at the water department or the water revenue bureau. So if you're trying to go through that process and having a little trouble, just contact Community Legal Services and we may be able to assist you.
That brings me to a very important question as we talk about accessibility during the pandemic. Does PICO, PGW, or the water department, do any of them have an online application process that someone can go to their website and fill out an application and submit documents that way?
Yeah, so each program you're able to apply online. So you can just go to the website of either PICO, PGW, or the water department to apply. You can also call each individual utility and request an application, and they should mail one to you. And then you can just fill it out, send it back with your documents.
So that's great to know. Are there any other, I guess, responsibilities that a customer would have under the program? Is there a requirement that they recertify at some point, or when you get in, are you just in for life?
So there are requirements that you recertify. Typically it's annually, and that can be extended for certain reasons, like if you get a LIHEAP grant. The important thing to keep in mind now, though, given the coronavirus, is that you will not have to recertify for PICO and PGW. They are not kicking people out of the program for failing to recertify because they understand it may be difficult to get documents and send them back during this time.
Right, so that's important information for people who are already in these utility assistance programs, that they won't be kicked out if recertification is somewhat more burdensome right now during the pandemic than it would otherwise be. So we appreciate all of that information. It's super useful. So Rebecca, I want to turn to you and just generally have a conversation about what should utility customers, whether it be PICO, PGW, or the water department, how should they manage utility debt? Because I know we've just come off of what would have been the winter moratorium, which was like a ban on shutoffs at the state level. And some people might have been struggling, and now we've got the pandemic, which kind of makes that crisis a lot worse than it was previously. So what are strategies that people can use to manage their utility debt as it may be accumulating at this point?
So yeah, there's a few different things that we like to think about when we're helping people with their utility bills. The first is the utility assistance programs and getting onto those, which can help lower your bill and also deal with your past balance. There's also payment arrangements, which are available if you're not eligible for the customer assistance programs, or if you're on those programs, but you've fallen behind on bills. And that can give you a varying amount of months to pay back that balance. One thing to note for payment arrangements is you would first contact your utility for a payment arrangement. We usually recommend that people don't just say yes to a payment arrangement because it'll get them to avoid a shutoff for a utility, but because the utility could stop offering additional payment arrangements in the future if you aren't able to keep up with your payments. And if the payment arrangement that you are offered is unaffordable for you, you can contact the Public Utility Commission and ask for a more extended payment arrangement, and they might be able to offer something that would be more affordable for you. And if you are a survivor of domestic violence, and if you have a PFA, protection from abuse order, there are special protections available, and that looks like a longer term payment arrangement for a balance.
So we can start with survivors of domestic violence. And as people are, I guess, transitioning out of those situations or may find themselves now actively fleeing domestic violence because of the pandemic and the nature of the shelter in place orders, what are the protections that are in place for survivors of domestic violence with regards to utility service and utility debt?
So the major one is the extended payment arrangements. The utility is required to offer a 36-month payment arrangement on a balance. And in addition to that, there's the requirement that they offer an additional warning before you're shut off, and they must get in contact with you in order to be able to shut off your service. So there's a few different things that can really help you out. That is, and it's intended sort of as a way to, if you provide the utility with a copy of your protection from abuse order or some sort of documentation regarding the domestic violence that you've faced, they are required to be more reasonable with you in regarding the bills that they.
So you mentioned protection from abuse orders. Is there a process by which someone who is protected by a protection from abuse order may have lived at a prior residence and is now moving and trying to set up service? Is there a process, a specialized process for them to maybe not have that debt from that prior household travel with them to their new residence?
That's a good question that I don't know if there's a linear process. I think for those sort of situations, it would first require that you contact the utility and explain that you're no longer living there, and if there was some sort of domestic violence that was involved, sharing that if you feel comfortable, or sharing the protection from abuse order. There's also the option of contacting the utility commission to issue a complaint, file a complaint to sort out, when you left the property and why, and that you were fleeing from some sort of unsafe situation. But this is sort of a complicated situation that I you know, would encourage you to contact community legal services if you have questions, because we can help sort through all of that.
So what I will say, based on my own limited knowledge of the issue, is that if you are a survivor of domestic violence and you're transitioning to new housing, there is a process in place, both with the PUC and with the utility companies, that if you were listed as a household member at a prior residence and you're moving as a result of domestic violence, that prior household member's debt will not be placed on a new account, and you will be offered a new account in your name with all of the protections that are in place for a survivor of domestic violence, which includes more reasonable payment arrangement terms that you kind of alluded to, Rebecca, and other protections for a survivor of domestic violence in Pennsylvania. You did mention the Public Utility Commission. What are instances in which someone should approach or file a formal or informal complaint with the Public Utility Commission?
So the first thing is that you're always going to be required to contact the utility first and try to negotiate with them. If you are unable to do so, then the next step would be to file an informal complaint with the Public Utility Commission. One thing to note is that during the pandemic, they are prioritizing people who do not have a utility service at this time. They're also handling appeals of denials for those customer assistance programs and unreliable service issues. So if there's something about a billing dispute, or something that's not infringing on your service at this time, they will be less able to handle that right now. But the key thing is that the Public Utility Commission will look into and investigate the claim and find a resolution. You can, if you disagree with their decision on the informal complaint, you would file an appeal, and in that case, it would become a formal complaint.
And this is an avenue for customers who, both PICO and PGW, since those are the two regulated entities in Philadelphia, for people who are trying to do with a water company and trying to get their service restored. Is there any avenue that they can contact, or an agency that basically takes complaints about the water department or the water department service issues?
Yes, I know for the TAP program, if you were denied and you wanted to dispute that, you would contact the tax review board, the city's tax review board. Cameron, do you know for water disputes exactly what agency that goes to? Is it just water revenue?
There's an informal hearing process that you can go through. I would also say, though, that if your service is currently off now, because during COVID, the water department is restoring customers even if they can't pay for restoration, you should just contact them directly. But yes, after the pandemic ends, if you're in that situation, or if you just have a billing dispute, there is an informal hearing process that you can go through, and then an appeal process to that as well.
That's good to know. So just to recap really briefly, if you are struggling to manage your utility bills coming out of either the winter moratorium or just COVID-19 related hardships, there are utility assistance programs that you can apply for that every major water utility provider in the city of Philadelphia has. You can also request payment arrangement if you're not eligible for a utility assistance program, or if you're on one already. You can contact the Public Utility Commission for those two utilities, PICO and PGW, that are regulated by the commission, and they can handle denials of entry into utility assistance programs, denials of service reconnection claims, and there's also special protections for victims of domestic violence living throughout the city of Philadelphia who are either seeking to set up service or transition into a new household and trying to make sure that they can continue life as we know it. So that brings me to the second part of the conversation. Is there any assistance available in terms of grants or other funding for individuals who have fallen behind on their utility bills or who would like to get caught up on their utility bills at this time?
Yeah, so I can take this one. The main grant funding source that we typically advise our clients to access specifically for heating bills, and that could be either gas or electric, is LIHEAP. The LIHEAP season did end on April 10th. However, there is the possibility that a new program could open up to assist with bills during the summer. The details of that have not been finalized yet, but in order to stay up to date on that, just be checking the Community Legal Services website, where we should be able to update people on that program.
So you said the LIHEAP season has ended at this point in time, but there is the possibility that there'll be new funding or new resources that are available for people in the future?
Yes, hopefully during the summer, though the details of that haven't been totally fleshed out yet. Aside from that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just a quick question or follow up on that. So I know that LIHEAP, just to go through that a little more deeply, what's the LIHEAP season and when does it open? Because I know it's tied to the winter moratorium, but people may not necessarily be aware of when that is, looking ahead at the future.
Yeah, so basically November through April is that season. It's also important to keep in mind that there's two main grants that you may be eligible for through LIHEAP. The regular is the cash grant, and that's $200 to up to $1,000. And you can get that if your service is on or if it's off. The other is the crisis grant, which you can only receive if your service is off or if you have a shut-off notice, and that's up to $600.
And are there any restrictions on how often people can receive this money? So let's say I received the LIHEAP grant last LIHEAP season. Can I now go in and apply for a cash and or crisis grant in the fall?
So you can continue to apply every season, and even within the season, if you are in a crisis situation and you apply for a crisis grant and you don't use the full $600, say you only receive $300 of it, if you face another crisis within that same season, you can apply again.
So that may be a useful resource for individuals who make it through the summer and come upon the fall and are once again struggling because they either haven't returned to work yet as a result of COVID-19 or are underemployed as a result of COVID-19, and they're trying to make ends meet. There'll be LIHEAP in the fall to basically supplement their utility bills. Are there any other utility assistance programs or grant funding that's currently available?
Yep, so the other grant funding source is USIF. They provide grants of up to $1,500 for PICO and PGW. Right now, you should only be applying for a grant for your PGW service because the USIF grants are only to help customers who are either in shut-off status or have a active shut-off notice. So if you're in that situation, if your service is off and you're a PICO customer, I'd advise you just to contact PICO first to be restored. The other requirements for USIF is that the income status that you have to be at is a little higher than the customer assistance programs. So if you're not eligible for a customer assistance program, you may still be eligible for a USIF grant. The other thing to keep in mind is that USIF will only provide the grant if they can bring your bill down to zero, or if it's a PGW grant, the amount needed to catch you back up on the CRP program to restore that way.
So you mentioned income limits. Sorry to cut you off. What are the current income limits for the utility assistance programs and the USIF grant program?
So for the utility programs for PICO and PGW, it's 150% of the federal poverty level. And for the water department, you can go up to 250% of the federal poverty level if you have a special hardship. For USIF, it's 175% of the federal poverty level.
So that means that most of the clients who walk in the door or the virtual doors of community legal services or any other legal aid provider would be eligible for some form of assistance, both under the utility assistance programs and USAF.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So
The other thing that USIF is offering right now is a specific COVID relief program. You may be able to get some mortgage and rental assistance, as well as some utility assistance if you've fallen behind just related to COVID in those specific months. So most likely beginning in March.
that's good to know. So how do people access these resources at this point in time? Is there a number that they can call for USEF applications or an email address? Any of that information is available?
So typically people can apply by going through the neighborhood energy centers, but given the coronavirus, that's not a possibility right now. So everyone who's applying for USIF should be contacting them directly. If you go to the USIF website, there is a number to call. You can leave a voicemail explaining your situation.
Okay. And what's that website?
The USIF website is, typically I Google USIF, the usifacts.org.
Okay.
Sorry, I have that off the top of my head.
That's it. So that's usifacts.org. That will link you to centers that are processing applications remotely and also give you some additional information on those programs. So Rebecca, I kind of want to tie this into housing a little bit more and talk about illegal utility shutoffs or attempts by landlords to turn off utility services to homes that may be occupied by tenants in Philadelphia. Is there any protection around that issue?
Yes. So depending on the utility, there are some different laws and protections in place. If the landlord is the utility customer, then the landlord would have could have contacted the utility and asked them to shut off the service. And if they shut off the service because of that, it would be a violation of USTRA, for the water service. And it is only legal if all of the tenants have consented, or if the landlord certifies that it's vacant. So this is something that you would definitely want to contact community legal services about, contact the Public Utility Commission if this is a PICO or PGW case. Otherwise, the tenants are required to get 30 days notice, which provides them an opportunity to continue service by making payments going forward. So this would also create the presumption that subsequent changes to the lease are retaliatory. So that is in reaction to this utility dispute. Tenant. Sorry.
Not to cut you off, but that feels like a lot of information.
Yeah.
So if you're living in a property where your landlord's the utility customer and your landlord contacts the utility and says, shut off my water, the utility is required to somehow verify that no one's living there before they can shut off the water, or that's a violation of USTRA, which is, I believe, the Utility Service Terminations Rights Act, or I don't remember what the acronym actually means at this point in time, but that's a protection that's in place for tenants who are not directly utility customers. And it requires if they do find out that the property is occupied, there's a 30-day notice requirement. And then the tenants have the ability to pay, I believe, the last 30 days bill and keep the account going on a forward going basis. Correct?
Yes, that is a great summary. Thank you.
No problem. I just wanted to make sure we get that correct. And what happens if, in the instance where the landlord is not the utilities customer, or it's you're the utility customer and the landlord is doing something to disrupt or interfere with your service?
So it's possible that in those cases, the utility can help you out with restoring the service. So it sort of depends on the utility just because of the ways that the service gets into the property. But oftentimes this is something that is a dispute with the landlord and the tenant, and would be sort of something to bring to CLS's landlord tenant unit. This would generally be an example would be like a landlord turns off the electric in the basement, but the tenant can't access the basement. That is something that the landlord tenant unit, housing unit at CLS works on. It's still helpful to talk to the utility and make sure that this isn't something that they were involved in, or to prove that they, if they can access the meter and see that it's still in place and they aren't getting a reading, that would help clarify that this was something that the landlord stepped in to do. And if that is happening, if there's a action by the landlord to turn off your service right during the pandemic, it's more likely that it is something that was done on their own and not through the utility, since the utilities are not shutting anybody off by their own actions right now.
So that's great to know that if you come home and you don't have utility service at this point during the pandemic, you can of course call the utility company and they can run a check remotely on your meter to see if current is flowing through your meter, because they're not actively terminating customers. So that means that in the instance where your service has been disconnected at this point in time during the pandemic, it is likely an act by your landlord to illegally evict you or remove service from your property, to cause you to leave the property, which is something that the housing unit at CLS here does investigate and does provide legal advice on at various instances. So you can of course call us at 215-981-3700 if that is actually happening at this point in time. Can we talk about, I know we mentioned the PUC briefly before, what is the PUC's current capacity to deal with customer complaints and other issues during the pandemic?
Sorry about that. So I think I mentioned this briefly, but they're right now prioritizing customers that don't have utility service. So this would be something that you could call them for. That's the best way to get in contact with them right now. So the phone number for the PUC is 1-800-692-7380. And they will most likely, again, redirect you to the utility if you haven't negotiated with them, attempted to negotiate with them. So there's the prioritizing customers without utility service, denials for the CAP programs for PGW and PICO, and if your service is not working properly. So if there's some sort of gas leak or the electric fuse is sparking, that kind of thing.
That's great. So I think we've covered a lot of information in the last 45 minutes, and I just want to do really quickly a high-level review as we wrap up, and both you, Cameron and Rebecca, can add any information that I may have missed in my review as we kind of wind things down. So important things to know right now is that utility companies aren't doing shutoffs during the pandemic, and if you are currently off, you can proactively request a restoration, at least from PICO and PGW. There's sort of a different process in place with the water company, but it doesn't hurt to reach out to them and ask that question, although you're not guaranteed a restoration. And for customers who are either restored or on right now, but facing difficulties in managing their utility bills or utility debts, there are assistance programs that are available through all of the major utility providers. You can also request a payment arrangement, and if all else fails, you can contact the Public Utility Commission and file a complaint around either a denial of admission into an assistance program or trying to get your service restored and being denied restoration for some reason. In addition to that, there's that special carve out and special protections that are in place for victims of domestic violence, which should generally allow you to set up an account in your name if you haven't previously had one, or eliminate a prior abuser's debt from your name as you transition into a protected or more safe environment. And in terms of assistance funding that's available, there's LIHEAP, which is available every year, kind of November through April in that winter moratorium season, which will provide assistance to customers who either have fallen behind on their bill or just income eligible for the program, as a recognition of the fact that this is an actual hardship, and that's available. And there may be some supplemental assistance that comes out this summer because of COVID-19 and everything else that is happening both on the state and federal level. USEF is a grant that's available. You can get up to $1,500 here in the city of Philadelphia. They're working remotely, and you can contact them at useffacts.org, UESFACTS.org, and they can direct you to an application or to a center that is currently processing remotely. And as Rebecca had just mentioned, if you believe that your service is off, and it's not off because it's not going to be off because the utilities are terminating your service, but it's going to likely be off either because there's an issue with your meter or because your landlord has done something to shut off your service without your consent or without proper notice to you under OSTRA or the other laws that are protecting tenants living in rental properties throughout the city of Philadelphia. That is something that you can definitely contact both the energy unit here at CLS and our landlord tenant housing unit, and we can happily assist you with those issues. So Rebecca and Cameron, as we wrap up, is there any other information that tenants or homeowners in Philadelphia who are facing utility issues should know as we close off on today's edition?
That was great. Say just thanks so much for having us and letting us get to talk a little bit about these utility issues.
So thank you both for joining us. We are at the end of today's presentation. Just to recap, the CLS general hotline number is 215-981-3700. So if you are facing a utility issue, a housing issue, a public benefits issue, give us a call and someone will be able to get back to you as soon as possible to process you through an intake and see what assistance is available for you. We encourage listeners to join us again next week for another edition of Tenant Tuesdays at 2, where we hope to be discussing COVID-19 issues and reasonable accommodations, both in housing and in other issues that you may be facing at this time. But we thank you for spending your afternoon with us, and see you next week. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.